one of the things I always notice with trans people, like a lot of times they'll be head down, walking, shoulders hunched, like someone got to notice, someone got to notice. And after a while, I'm just like, fuck this. And so you realize when I walk around everywhere I go, shoulders back, head up, looking forward, it's like, this is who I am.
What's up, my bis and allies? Welcome back to Bisexual Behavior. For some reason, I am recording this at 9 o'clock at night, just questioning my life's choices. It's been one hell of a week, but I do have a lot in store for this month, so I do apologize for being a little late, but I promise it's worth the wait. And for those of you who are big fans of comedy, I have something really exciting. I interviewed Jaye McBride, a stand-up comedian who recently opened for Amy Schumer's tour, which is super exciting. Jaye is a really great comedian and is famously one of the first trans comedians that's actually performed at Madison Square Garden, which is super awesome. Jaye actually talked a lot about her journey with transitioning, but more so what life is like after transitioning, and we talk a lot about stand-up comedy. We talk about her dating life, or I guess as she puts it, lack thereof, but the interview is really great. I think that all of you will really enjoy it and will learn a lot about what it's like to, exist after transitioning and being in the world and kind of building your own self-confidence. I just think that it's a really fun story, and I hope that you'll get something out of it. So without further ado, here's Jaye McBride. Jaye McBride, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm in a corner too, which is, I realize it's like, because everything else is just a disaster. I was gone for almost a whole week, and like everything else, I'm like, let's just show as little of the apartment as possible.
I mean, I'm in my closet, so.
Oh, perfect. Nice.
Yeah, it's great. It's
it's
just
a nice
get
closet.
A little corner. Thank you.
Right.
I'm hiding the mess, as you mentioned, so.
The flags, though, very nice. You have two different flags there. What the very silvery lame sort of thing.
I've got a curtain here, and then we've got a flag here to make it look a little bit more official. So I'm really doing the best I can here. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I mentioned this to you, but I've been wanting to have you on for so long, and I finally got the courage to ask. But Jaye, you are a stand-up comedian. You opened for Amy Schumer's tour.
Yes.
How was that? What was that experience like?
Well, I mean, she's such a horrible person. No, just kidding. she's amazing. And the tour was it was crazy. It was just, there were some days she wanted to fit in as many days as possible. So like there were a couple weekends, like most of the time we would just travel regularly. We would fly, or sometimes we even took the train, but there were some times where there was a private jet. So we were I remember we went from Boston, we checked out of a hotel in Boston in the morning. In the afternoon, we made it to this little casino that we drove to in Connecticut, checked into the hotel there just to freshen up, get ready, left after the show, flew to Philadelphia, went into a third hotel. So it was just like a nonstop, like 3 hotels in one day. Just, it was stuff like that. It was so cool though. The crowds were amazing. She's great.
She's so good.
Yeah. Oh man, it was so much fun.
And I saw her new stand-up special. I think that was from the same tour, right?
Yeah, that's the one that she was sort of working on, and it finally, she recorded it at the end in LA. Yeah, it was great. I love hearing about her life as having a kid and being married. It's just, she's so great. But that must have been a really cool experience. So, well, also talking about no one talks about endometriosis. How crazy! I mean, it's just it was stuff like that, and women actually deal with that. And we were talking about some of the, I don't know if that's what, maybe it was the she was also I forget what, the hyperemesis, is that what it was she mentioned where when she was pregnant, she was just really sick all the time. And we were talking about some of the, we Googled some of the cures for that. And it was insane. One of them was to be covered in the blood of the husband who gave birth to you, stuff weird shit like that. It was just insane stuff going back. And thalidomide, which was this horrible drug in the 50s that they would prescribe that caused birth defects. It's just all these things that they just had no idea about. They're oh no, it's just you being crazy.
Yeah, right. What is it? The female hysteria, they always say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but it's really cool hearing about her experience with pregnancy, because I feel like people don't talk about how horrible it is. Like, you're like, oh, it's a miracle and you're, an angel for being able to give birth, but it's like, it's actually the worst from what I've heard from all my friends. I mean, I don't have any kids, but I've heard some horror stories of pregnancy, so it's like very nice to hear that from a celebrity. So
right. I used to work for an abortion rights group, and like they would always say how dangerous abortion is and how people can die. It's like more people die from childbirth. It's like
exactly.
All these people are like, it's like, why? Like that shouldn't be your argument, because first of all, it's like safer than aspirin, but whatever.
When it's done safely, of course. But how long have you been doing stand-up for?
I started in 2009, October of 2009, or September of 2009, excuse me. So it'll be, what is that, 14 years next month.
Wow. Yeah. So did you transition before you got into comedy?
I did. I transitioned 2 years before that, and things just, I did it when I was in 7th grade. I did like this talent show, I did stand up at a talent show, but that doesn't really count. It was a small town, so it was like 14 acts, it was like that. It wasn't exactly pro. It wasn't exactly like the Amy Schumer tour, but,
you worked your way up to it.
Yeah, exactly. But then, no, I transitioned 2 years before that, and it was just fun. It was just one of those things. Like once I transitioned, it felt like things were sort of like, oh, I can actually do things now. Oh, it's like such a weird weight was lifted off, and I started to do things. Like I went back to school. I got a degree in math, and then I was like, well, I'm always like stand up. Why not try that too? While we're at it, we're on a roll. And then tried it and just kept with it, and it was great. It's been great so far. Knock on wood.
Your plan with math? If you were going to do stand up,
I have no idea. Sorry, knock on wood. You see, I guess like I really always wanted a degree in math. I don't know why. I love math, but everyone's like. Originally, like I went to school for engineering, which I hated. I only did that because my dad wanted me to do engineering. He's like, "Oh, you're good at math. You're going to do engineering." And I was like, "Okay." And then I flunked out. And then I was just like, "It's like, you know what? No, I really want a degree in math." So then I went back, and I actually, it's amazing how much you take school seriously when you're older versus when you're right out of high school.
Seriously,
I actually like studied and did homework. I mean, when I went the first time, I remember I missed like an entire month of classes, just staying in, drinking, just doing nothing. It was just insane. But I really just love math. Yeah.
That's incredible, because I'm literally the opposite. If somebody asks me any kind of question related to math, I just like black out. Like my brain's like, I don't know what you just said. I'm not going to register it at all.
Yeah, you're not alone. No, I don't know why. I just really always liked math. I was always good at it. And, it's just one of those things. And it was like, I got to a point though, after I graduated, I'm like, well, I can either get a PhD, which means teaching at a college level, which might take years, or teach in high school. And that was it. There were like very few options for a math degree. So,
but now you're doing some stand up in schools, right? Or are you still doing that?
I have. Like, I haven't done it in a while. Like, I haven't done a college in a while. I can't remember the last time. I think I did a Zoom lecture kind of thing earlier this year, but that's about it. I haven't really done much. I mean, I don't have a problem with doing colleges. I just haven't done it in a while. Yeah. I know a lot of comics now are all like grizzly about like comics. Like Seinfeld was talking about how he never wants to do colleges again. And like a lot of people.
I mean, like whatever pays the bills. I feel like it's all relative experience.
Well, I mean, I think that they have this impression that everyone's a snowflake, that sort of stuff. And like everyone's like, it's like, well, maybe they just don't want to listen to someone like their grandfather's age talk about going to the pharmacy. I mean, maybe that's it. So it's fine. I would definitely do it. I just haven't. And honestly, I've been so lucky with being at the Cellar. I've got so many spots there now. It's just I give them pretty much full availability when they need it. So.
That's awesome. And forgive my manners. I usually start out with introductions so the listeners know who we are. But I'll start. My name's Talia. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a bisexual cis woman. What about you?
Jaye, she, her. Yeah, boring person. Like, I don't think is it like not, I'm more no sexual, not asexual. I'm sort of no sexual because I just like, I don't know. I had a dry spell ever since Obama took office. I don't know that maybe they're a coincidence. I don't want to blame him for everything, but no, I don't know. I make a joke on stage how I guess I'm I don't know. I guess I'm straight, but I don't have the same brand loyalty that I used to. You know,
Gotcha.
it's like honestly, I think transitioning, you just sort of like so many people when they transition, like I'm growing up in this extremely heteronormative like environment. When you transition, like, oh wait, I guess I don't have to be straight, you know.
That's
and honestly,
true.
right? And dating, like honestly, got with like there are very few guys who want a relationship with a trans person. Like there are a lot of guys who want to have sex with a trans person. Very few want to have a relationship, and it's like that doesn't. I don't see the upside in that, you know. So then you get to like honestly, I don't know. I would probably be most likely to have a relationship with another trans person. That's just my feeling, but who knows? Whatever. If it happens, it does. Otherwise, I love sitting around in my apartment in my underwear, just watching stupid TV shows, like watching Law and Order 24 hours in a row.
Pure bliss.
Fine. I'm good with that. I want Law and Order sexual.
Another person is just going to ruin that.
Right,
wait,
exactly.
Law and Order sexual. That's
right.
Amazing.
That's it. I'm a Lenny Briscoe sexual.
Yes. Relatable. One thing I usually ask guests is like, what is your most bisexual behavior? But I guess, what is your straightest behavior? I must know.
I mean, I don't know. I think the most like feminine thing I do is listening to true crime podcasts. It feels like, I don't know, that feels like the most on brands women's thing that I do right now. I don't know. Now I feel like I'm not very, honestly, like I'm not very girly, I guess. I'm not very feminine. And I was thinking about this the other day where people like there'll always be like never go on Twitter, by the way, anymore. It's absolutely terrible for trans people.
Madhouse.
It's insane. But like whenever they show a picture of a trans person, it's like a cross dress from the most like into heels and like a dress and a tight dress and a short dress and stuff. I'm like, I wore men's pajama bottoms for most of the last week. You know, I wear jeans and Chuck Converse most of the time.
I mean, you and I both.
Yeah, it's just like I think people just assume that like when someone transitions, they're just gonna do this like insanely grotesque caricature of a woman, and it's that's not. I mean, I guess there are some people who do that, sure. Just like there's some women. I mean, like Dylan Mulvaney goes over the top all the time.
Yeah, fine. I was gonna mention Dylan.
But I mean, Dylan also is Dylan really any different than say the Kardashians? You know, like really?
Yeah.
And like the fact that some women act that way, some trans women act yeah, I guess it makes sense that there should be like a variety. But
yeah, that's really such a good point.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I've been working on that one. And I mean, like the Kardashians didn't ruin Bud Light.
Oh,
that is so insane. That whole thing. But I guess my both bi thing, my both straight thing is just, I'm going to go with the true crime podcast.
I think that's a great answer. And it's really such like a stereotypical white girl thing to love. So I love that. It's my favorite.
Absolutely. Anything on like, there's this channel like that has all, I think Oxygen. Maybe it's Oxygen that has all these like true crime stuff. And there's this show, Accident, Suicide, or Murder. And I love that show. And it's always murder. It's always murder. I love it every single time. That's all I need. I need that like consistency in my life. I don't know what I'd do if it were suicide. Murder. Yeah, I don't know if it were suicide. I don't know. I'd have to stop watching.
Yeah, the suicide is not great for me to watch, but I do love cult dramas and documentaries. That's that's my shit. I just love it. And the NXIVM stuff, that always gets me, especially because it's from like the capital region.
Right.
You're from, right? You
absolutely.
In the capital region.
Albany, 518. That's right.
That's right. Yeah, I think you were here recently for a stand-up show.
I was just up in Saratoga, which is great. It was a really fun show at Universal Presentation Hall, something like that.
Oh, Preservation Hall, yeah.
Preservation Hall, yeah.
Relatively newer.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Like 70 or 80 people came out for it. It was fun.
Nice. So, Jay, something you mentioned beforehand is that, you don't feel like since you've transitioned, you don't feel like you need to like say that you're straight or that you can kind of just fit into any role. Something I've heard from other trans people before is that they feel like their sexuality changes as they transition. Is that something that you experienced? How has sexuality kind of played into your transition?
Yeah, a lot of trans people, like their sexuality, especially like I've noticed a lot with trans men, like they'll transition from a very butch lesbian to a gay man, which is, it blows my mind. It's insane. I love it. But I don't know. I don't really, I mean, I think when I first, like, I never dated guys as a guy, I was never a gay man. I never felt that way. I was never really attracted, but then I transitioned. I thought like, that's what it was sort of in my head. That was like the fantasy of being like, fantasy is the wrong word, but that was like the pie in the sky. If I had a magic wand and could like, it'd be like someone like my mom, I'd be like, oh, I'd be able to have a family. I'd have a husband or whatever. I'd have a job. But then I transitioned. It was just more like, I can do whatever, it was like that whole notion just seemed like that. Why is that what you're going? It was more like I was doing what I thought I was supposed to versus what I want. And honestly, like I think, when you transition and when you see like you learn empathy for other people, which is pretty amazing. I never expected that, but also, you do open yourself up to other things. Like you realize you surround yourself with people in the LGBTQ community. Like I find like I'll find myself like looking at women like, oh yeah, I can definitely date a woman now, or again, it's just one of those things. It's just not that as important to me as I thought it would be.
Yeah. But, I don't know. No, that makes sense. And do you feel like, so because you started transitioning in the 2000s, have you found that since then things have been very different for trans people? I mean, because from my perspective, we're seeing a lot more younger people transitioning much earlier and being out and open. And then we're also seeing a bunch of laws that are, attacking trans rights. So like, I guess from your perspective, how does that look and how has it shaped over the years?
Yeah, it's a weird time for sure. I mean, like in blue states, I think it's gotten much better for sure in a lot of ways. I think the country's just become more polarized with that. I mean, when I in 2000, I transitioned February of 2007, and I like at the time, like you could still fire someone if they transition. Like it was like it was not like it was not a protected status. So someone could transition and be fired. It was insane. Like yeah. Those since then the Supreme Court has actually ruled for us, which is weird. But with comedy, I would go to red states and say like 2014, and I would do these red states, and it was great. Some of these people had never met a trans person, and all they knew was that I was doing comedy that they enjoyed, and they're like, "Oh, you're actually normal." They're like, I'd only heard about trans people, but I didn't know anything. Since then, and especially since the era of Trump, it's just gotten very, very so like we went from being almost like a sideshow anomaly to being this just evil, this evil like stereotype that I don't even know how to describe it, but they look at us as almost like the villain and the villain that they made up in their war against cancel culture and wokeism. Like we're like the villain in that narrative. So in some parts of the country, it's just like it's insane to me. Like I really don't want to go to some of those states that I was more than happy to go to 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It's just gotten. It is great to see kids able to transition. It's amazing, and like meeting some of these people I met someone who's I think they're about 20 now, but they transitioned as a kid. They were testifying before their the state legislature as a kid. Wow. It was like, and to see them as such a happy, well-adjusted adult is pretty amazing. That's something that I never thought would be possible in my lifetime. But again, it's just. It gets to you all this hate, all this like constant like when I talked earlier about Twitter being just a fucking nightmare. It's just like all this constant, the same thing, the same memes, the same like constant like misgendering, all this hatred. So it's just I just deleted my account, and every once in a while I'll go on there to see if there's any news stories or anything because I did love their trending feature. But now it's just it's tough. It's a mixed bag. So. It's great to see kids. It's great to see that people are accepting in a lot of places, but it's also on the flip side is that there are people who are less accepting than ever. So,
yeah, something you mentioned that trans people tend to be villainized. And I think it was the documentary Disclosure on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think they talk a lot about that a lot of trans people in media end up being the villain in some way. And I feel like that just adds to that whole stereotype that trans people are villains, which is clearly not true. But how do you think that's impacted?
I am. I do murder. Yeah, I have body parts in the freezer. I'm not gonna. I shouldn't say that. I'm not gonna say I put them there. I'll take the fifth.
Little light murder.
Yeah. Nothing. I mean, come on. He was practically dead.
If it makes you feel any better, I totally fall into the bisexuals or slutty stereotype. Like I just own it. Yeah, I'm all greedy, slutty, whatever you want to say. Sure, I'll take it.
Right. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
As they should be. I mean,
That's
if you're gonna be bisexual, it's like, shit or get off the pot. You really
exactly.
you can't go halfway in. You got to go full.
Got to go full in.
Right, 100%. No, I think I mean the Dylan Mulvaney thing is like a prime example of like it wasn't like Budweiser had this national campaign to make Dylan Mulvaney the poster girl for Bud Light. It was they sent her a 6-pack with her face on it, and she posted on her Instagram feed. That was it, and that was enough God. For some people to all of a sudden be like, "We're canceling Bud Light. We're never drinking Bud Light again," and causing them millions of dollars in damage. Like the same people who complain that cancel culture is evil are canceling certain brands, right. and it's insane. It's just
so hypocritical too, because it's like the way that they talk about other people. It's only when it's benefiting them is when it's not an issue, of course.
100%. Like what we do to My Pillow is canceling them. What they do to Bud Light is not. I mean, come on,
it's so stupid.
It's insane.
How do you think like the culture been for comedy and stand-up comedy over the past year since you've been doing it? Do you feel like overall there's more trans comedians, there's more inclusive queer spaces?
I think what I'm finding now, most trans comedians seem to be, in New York anyway, seem to really do a lot of queer spaces only, and things like, or they'll do a lot of like alt rooms. There are definitely a lot more. I think like, because I started in Albany, I feel like I had to perform to all crowds.
Yeah.
And I did. So I never had like an alt room. I had to do it for everybody. And rarely would I see a trans person in the crowd, almost never. I think in New York, because like some crowds you can go to and it'll be 90% queer, and which is, I think 100%, there are more trans comics, like a lot more trans comics. But I don't know that a lot of them are sort of reaching into like the main rooms, which is fine. I think I just felt like I had to do that because that's where I started. But New York, you don't have to anymore. You can do these like other rooms. You can do these other spaces. You can, and it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I actually, because I live in Albany, and I saw a stand-up show with Ashley Gavin. I don't know, you might know her,
but
nice.
She's great.
Famous lesbian comedian, and she did a show in Albany at the mall because there's a venue at the mall, and it was a lot of straight people there who just went and they didn't know who Ashley Gavin was. They didn't realize they were going to like a queer show, and those people were the most into the stand-up set. It was really hilarious because like all of the queer people, they weren't like laughing as hard. They weren't like as engaging as much as the straight people. Like they were like screaming, laughing out loud. They were engaging with Ashley. It's just so funny to see like straight people be like, to really just kind of embrace queer culture. I'm seeing that a lot more now than I was before, which is really interesting.
I really like, I do like performing in front of straight crowds, and a lot, like one of my favorite things to do is especially if there's a guy up front who looks a little uptight, one of those guys who looks like maybe he won't laugh at women comedians as much as he would male comedians. My favorite thing in the world is to start hitting on him. It's the greatest. Like no matter what, even if he gets turned off by, everyone else will laugh, and it'll just be the funniest thing, and I can just call back to it. Like I love that, and like just seeing like how straight people react, and just and I mean, I try not to get too into I guess politics, or I don't want to come across as woe is me for the last 5 years of what happened to trans people, but I can get a little bit of a message across too, which is nice. But then I can also poke fun of myself, and 90% of my set is making fun of myself and my family. So
perfect.
It's fun.
Did you ever get a date out of doing those bits?
No, but I think a couple people didn't. I think a couple people definitely wanted to pursue it. like one guy after a show would just come up to me, is like, "Hey, that was really funny," and just gave me like a kiss on the cheek. I was like, "All right, that was a bit. That was not intended." But who knows? I don't know.
Then he's still thinking about it to this day.
Probably. Yeah. I don't know. And after seeing someone from the point of view of a comic as an audience member, I don't know if I could do anything after that. I don't know. It'd be weird.
I can get that. I've heard other comedians saying how they feel really weird about dating somebody who's been at their stand-up set, or if they've met that way, that it just feels too strange. Right. And I can get that because you're pretty vulnerable on stage, like just talking about really inappropriate stuff. So I can imagine that's a little awkward.
And it's a different power dynamic too. which you have to change.
So. Oh yeah. One thing I've heard you talk about before in like a different podcast is how dating men is kind of a shit show, especially as a trans woman. So do you want to talk about that a little bit more, especially because you mentioned that you haven't really been dating a whole lot? I guess what kind of made you want to stop a little bit?
Right. Well, it's not even kind of a shit show. It's a shit show. It's 100% a shit show. It's not even close. And to be fair, I'm sure there are a lot of guys out there who would like to, like, I hate the fact that so, like, some people like to hook up. I'm just not a hookup kind of person. I just, it's not who I am. I don't like, if I want to see someone, I want to be someone we can hang out with and just like be assholes together, you know, like that's what I'm looking for.
It's a dream.
Yeah. Right. Like just someone else to just be an asshole with. And, I feel like most of the dating sites that I've found, and again, I'm sure this is a generalization. I'm sure there are going to be people listening to be like, I'm nothing like that. But it's a lot of people just like what do you know, they want to be this whole like friends with benefits kind of thing, you know, and that's it. And it's like, I get it. You are uptight. Like, I wish guys had the luxury of being as open sexually as women are. You know, I wish they didn't have to hide like the fact that how many guys like a finger up the ass, but they're unwilling to say so, you know, because they're afraid of what their friends are going to say.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the thing. They all do. I don't care. They all do. They all want that finger in the ass. I don't care who they are. But I think guys are just prone to be like, that was a lot.
No, it's perfect.
I think guys are just prone to like, just hide everything that's like, you know, anything that's even remotely considered gay or feminine or anything like that. And there's so much pressure on guys to do that. I just wish like, if guys could be open with saying like, wow, I just, you know, I want to be pegged, you know, they would be so much happier instead of having to go on these dating sites, hiding it from their girlfriend, saying like, hey, you want to meet in a hotel? And we get, you know, it's like, come on,
just get pegged.
Just get pegged.
Just get pegged.
Right?
I mean, things will be so much easier for you.
Exactly. Instead, they look for a trans woman to peg them, and it's like, come on.
But trans people aren't just like a tool for their sexual desires.
That's how it feels. That's 100% how it feels. And
I can imagine.
Right. And you know, and some trans women will be happy to do that. Some trans women won't. You know, it's just. I just not into hookups. So
I don't blame you. I feel like, so I've heard somebody talk about how they feel the same way and they say that they're demisexual. Have you heard about demisexuality, and do you feel like that kind of falls under your spectrum a little bit?
I see people post it, but I still don't know. I assume it's similar to pansexual or bisexual, but
I guess it's like on a spectrum of asexuality where it's like you don't necessarily want to just jump the bones of someone you first met. You want to kind of get to know them and have like a connection before it gets like sexual, which I feel like is just a lot of people at the end
I would say that's old fashioned.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's what I would call it. I'm definitely like that. I'm definitely old fashioned.
Old fashioned Jay. Love it.
Demisexual.
Sure. I'll take all the labels, honestly. One time somebody called me a lesbian and I was like honored. I was like, I wish I didn't like men, honestly.
Right. Yeah.
So people who are transitioning, what would you recommend for them to get started? Like what made you decide to get started, and what would you recommend for someone else?
I mean, I knew all along. I knew there was something wrong with me. It's like one of those, like the thing for me was every day growing up Catholic, I was just like, oh, if I pray to God, he'll wake me. Like I'll wake up, and you know, I remember I was like 6, 7. I kept having these memories, and all it was God. So it was like a 6-year-old praying, being like, turn me into a little girl instead of a little boy, that sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
So I always knew, but when I started to think like, oh, maybe when I started to see more trans people, at the time it was like a little exploitative, you know, talk shows and things like that. But I thought there's a chance. But the first thing to do for anyone who's considering transitioning, I always tell them, is to see a therapist. 100%. Like so many people now, like you can get hormones online, probably. Like you can get pretty much anything you need to transition online. And I just say, don't do that. Just don't do it. Just go to a therapist. It helps you unpack a lot of these feelings you have. And especially, I think like there's so many, like, I wish therapists would stop treating trans men and trans women the same. I think they have this cookie cutter approach. And I think if someone who was born female, growing up will face all sorts of different pressures that someone growing up male doesn't. And so like things like facing body dysmorphia, having eating disorders, all these things that like this, having sexuality pushed in front of them. And I think I especially wish someone who was born female really takes time to go into therapy and think about what they're doing, because testosterone is just brutal. It's like, it changes everything, and it's so harsh. And someone transitioning male to female, pretty much everything's reversible. Hormones don't really do that much. The puberty blockers can be, you can stop taking puberty blockers. It's fine, but going the other way, it's so brutal, and it's so much. I would just hope they would like seek therapy, seek friends, and seek a support group. And and just the people I really feel for are the ones whose parents are may not be a big fan of it. Those are the people I feel for. And I always I wish I could be there for them. I would. And online, obviously, I've had people reach out all the time, but I just hope they therapy, B, find people you can trust and support you.
Yeah. And I'm sure that most places will have some kind of local support group at an LGBTQ center.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. 100%. So I can share some resources in the show notes, but thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful. And what ways can you help build up your confidence after the transition, and kind of, because you started doing stand-up after you transitioned. So what kind of helps you build up your confidence to put yourself out there after?
In life, I feel like what's given me confidence a little bit more, which this is kind of a weird thing, but one of the things I always notice with trans people, like a lot of times they'll be head down, walking, shoulders hunched, like someone got to notice. And after a while, I'm just like, fuck this. And so when I walk around everywhere I go, shoulders back, head up, looking forward, it's like, this is who I am.
That's right.
It's you really have to have that sort of like that mentality in your head. Like you can't have that body language, because it's almost like faking it till you make it in some sense.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like that just goes a long way. And I mean, comedy, it's just like, I think I got the confidence just by doing it more and more. But in life, I think you have to get a thick skin, and you have to be open and be like, this is who I am, period.
Yeah.
And it's not up for debate.
That's right. And there's a lot of great allies out there, but what advice would you give to them for anyone who wants to support trans rights and fight against the horrible legislation that's been attacking trans folks?
Well, vote. It's important. It's so important, especially. But I think what I tell them more than anything else, local elections, especially in red states, are just as important. People don't realize that. Like local elections, small elections. That's how all these state houses are getting these laws passed, and that's how people are getting these people into the House of Representatives. Like, so I would say, like, when you get politically active, look at local elections first. That's the number one thing I would say.
You're so right. I'm going to transition the conversation a little bit. So first of all, thank you so much for sharing that. I didn't want to get
Was that
too
a pun? Was that a pun?
I didn't mean it to be, but it could be. But I really appreciate you sharing that story, because I didn't want to necessarily get too political, but it's hard not to when you're talking about, our rights, and just how being able to like go to the bathroom, to the women's bathroom, and not have to deal with somebody like arresting you. You know what I mean? So,
right.
So I appreciate you sharing that. But
another thing, like, I'm sorry to keep going to politics. One thing you'll find, like, abortion rights and trans rights are pretty much interlinked. Like we're pretty much the Venn diagram would be a perfect circle. It's not even close. Some of these, when I was on tour with this abortion rights group, we would go to these small clinics, and some of the towns, this was the only place people could go for things like PrEP, or for like trans care, or for AIDS treatment. So it's like we're in this together.
I don't think people think about that, though. They're not thinking about how that kind of ties together. And also, men can get pregnant too. So, there's a lot that falls into it. And I feel like it's all just trying to control just anything that isn't considered the straight, classic white man, So,
right.
So it really does play into a lot of it. That's really interesting to think about. But one thing that I do in the podcast is I have a shared on Reddit segment. So basically, I'll read something I found on the bisexual Reddit, and then we discuss it. And I have a really chaotic one, and I hope you're ready.
All right.
All right. So So the title is "What Do I Do When I Want to Look at Boobs?" which is a quote from the original poster's boyfriend. So, so let's get started. My boyfriend and I have been dating for nearly 6 months now. Around the 2-month mark, I started to feel suspicious of him. During the day, he stopped responding to my messages and would get back to me hours later, responding with, "Sorry, I was just waking up from a nap." This suspicion grew into doubt, and I found myself checking his phone while he slept. And I know that's a bad thing to do. We've discussed this. What I found was nothing I could have ever been prepared for. What do you think it is?
Oh, God. Is it pictures of other women's boobs?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay. His iCloud was full of nearly 100,000 saved photos and videos of porn. The collection was extensive and it was organized in files with different titles and such as folders with BBC, personal nudies. I love that it's nudies and not just nudes, of which were included 20 women from his high school and nude pictures without their consent, which is like, it's illegal and fucked up. Also included was pictures of all his exes' nudes as well, which I explicitly had discussed I would not be okay with prior to getting into the relationship with him. So just to be clear, this person who's submitting it is a gay man who's with a bisexual man. So,
Gotcha.
For context. So I'll continue. It's a little bit longer. Beyond the porn collection that he kept private, he also had a very public porn life. He has a Reddit account where he actively posted his and other nudes in different subreddits, as well as jerk buds, which he would jack off with them over the phone while watching porn together every night while we were together. So they were together when this was happening. Anyways, he had a Twitter account in which he posted his own nudes and had a small following which he actively interacted with, which is great for Twitter because now it's becoming like a porn website essentially with the new X branding. He also had a private Discord to send nudes on and a private TikTok full of videos and followed tens of thousands of porn accounts on Instagram. I'm going to skip a paragraph just because it's like so incredibly long, but I'll move on to the last section here. Today, he promised not to watch porn or engage in that behavior. I think this was a good step forward for him, as the only way I see myself getting better is eliminating porn completely. However, yesterday he asked me, "So what am I supposed to do when I want to see a pair of boobs?" He told me he was not watching porn and not acting on those desires, but he would be suppressing his bisexuality and denying himself of who he is. Is he using his sexuality as an excuse for bad behavior, or is this something I could truly be taking into account? I need genuine advice. I told him that these desires are not sexuality, but a manifestation of his addiction. And the constant desire to look at boobs is not what it means for him to be bisexual. So, what do you think?
He's not going to stop looking at boobs. He's not going to stop looking at porn. And part of it's like, I mean, God almighty, yeah, it's not going to work. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Yeah. So the reason why I brought this up is because I think that porn is a really good way to explore your bisexuality, especially when you're in a monogamous relationship with another person. But
especially if one of them's bi and you're, yeah.
Exactly. But I think that it can be taken too far. And that's where it gets like illegal because he's sharing pictures of other people without consent. So like that's majorly fucked up.
Yeah.
And also the excuse of like, well, I need to look at boobs. It's just, the whole thing is weird. It's just not going to work out. But I guess from my perspective, I think it's like totally fine to look at porn and maybe you can like get your partner involved in it and watch porn together. But I guess at the same time, if it's two men and one guy wants to look at women and the other guy wouldn't, then that could be hard.
I don't understand the need to save these pictures either.
No, there's no need. No need to save like, the really, personal nudies.
Like I'm never at a CVS and I see someone like I was at Trader Joe's today and sometimes people wear exercise equipment and sometimes it's cold. And I thought, wow, that woman is freezing because her nipples are pointing out. But I never thought I really need to take a picture of this because I need to look at this tomorrow too. Yeah. I never in a million years and I get it. Okay, fine. Boobs are great. Boobs are wonderful.
They're amazing.
Like, a nice pair of boobs is great, but come on, stop it.
You could probably just Google boobs and see them.
You could Google boobs. Yeah.
There's so many ways to see boobs. I mean, you could go on Janelle Monáe's account and see her boobs, which is incredible. So,
right.
There's
ways. If you're Amish and this is, maybe that's when you would save a picture of boobs or a painting of maybe like a little wood cutting of boobs, but I don't, oh God, he seems like a creep.
Yeah.
also, I think you're asking too much to tell him to stop watching porn. That's my advice.
If he has a porn addiction, he's going to have to figure that out on himself. But at the end of the day, like, watching porn isn't a bad thing. But I guess, there's also the non-ethical porn. So that can be kind of an issue. But this poor person needs to dump their boyfriend is what it sounds like to me.
100%. 100%. And I assume every relationship is doomed. So I'm going to say vote with my gut here and say this is also doomed. And you need to move on.
That's right. If you're posting to Reddit asking about your relationship, it's doomed for sure.
Right. And honestly, like, I would say, like, did this person watch porn all along? Because you're not going to change someone. Like, that's this trap everyone seems to fall into. Like, oh, I need to change their behavior. Like, that's who they are. Like, you can. And
isn't this guy watching porn? Like, I feel like everyone watches porn at a certain point. When somebody's like, oh, I don't watch porn, I'm like, you're either lying or you just, like, consume it in a different way that you don't understand. Like, whether you're reading, like, 50 Shades of Grey or whatever it is.
100%.
Yeah. What would you do if you found out a guy you were dating was posting his own nudes on Reddit?
I probably wouldn't care, quite honestly. I don't know. I really don't think I would. I really don't think I would. And especially like if I were dating someone who was bi, I'd be like, all right, I'd be like, go ahead, knock yourself out. Like, I want to be alone. I'd be fine. like I could be a sister wife. I'd be like, all right, that's it. I only deal with you on Tuesdays. Every other day, you leave me alone. Like that. I could do that.
Perfect.
I could do that. Yeah.
Jay, are your DMs open? I feel like people are going to be interested in this.
Right. Yeah. If you're from Utah and looking for a sister wife who's, let me know.
Amazing. Jay, thank you so much for joining on the podcast. Is there anything that you would like to plug?
Well, I released my album earlier this year, my special earlier this year. Sorry, I don't know why people call it an album. It's not like anyone has a vinyl pressing of it. It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube, Spotify. It's called Daddy's Girl, and check it out.
And I listened to it. It's really good.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. But and thank you again for joining. Was there anything else that you wanted to share about your experience that you want listeners to know?
No, I'm boring. I'm sorry.
You're not boring. Well, you toured with Amy Schumer.
I pride myself on being boring.
Hey, I'm gonna stare at the wall after this, so I get you.
Okay, good.
Good. Hey listeners, I've got some exciting news. Bisexual Behavior is expanding to have more listener-contributed episodes, and we want to share your story on the podcast. Amplifying queer voices is a big part of the podcast, and our work wouldn't be possible without listeners like you. Interested? You can apply to be a podcast guest, ask a question, or submit to have your story read on air. Get started at bisexualbehavior.com or click the link in our show notes. And I did, in fact, stare at a wall after that interview. I think it's kind of funny because a lot of people assume that I'm extroverted, but really I only have small bursts of when I can be extroverted and socialize with people, and then after I have to, like, recharge. So that's the one thing that's funny about having a podcast and talking to so many people is that I just, like, need so much resting time. But thank you so much to Jay for joining on the podcast. I really had so much fun talking to her. And you can, of course, follow Jay on all of the social medias and listen to her stand-up special on Spotify, Daddy's Girl. Highly recommend. And if you want to support the podcast, you can follow us on Instagram at bisexualbehavior. You can also follow me at talia.tatiana. I'm also on TikTok, the same username. And please, it's really important that you subscribe, rate, and review on Apple and Spotify. That really helps get the podcast out there for people. And I actually launched a brand new website. You can see it at bisexualbehavior.com. So yeah, if you want to support again, rate and review and subscribe and share the podcast. But thank you again for listening, and we will see you shortly. Okay, bye.